Hi, this is Ali Arango of littleguycgi.com. In this tutorial, what you're going to learn how to do is how to make a simple male base mesh. You're going to start off from a blank Blender screen. You're going to learn how to take the default Blender cube. I'm going to quickly show you how to form that cube into the shape of a human head. From there, you're going to form out the torso. You're going to learn how to extrude the arms out, as well as extrude fingers out, as well as the thumb. You're going to learn how to extrude the legs out. You're going to be shown this in a step-by-step fashion. As I work my way through the tutorial, I try to explain not only what I'm doing, but why I'm doing what I'm doing. This tutorial is fully narrated, and this is going to show you a way of box modeling that I think that will allow you to make fairly quick characters that you'll be able to use in various situations. So let's get started. I'm going to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters, Kelly as well as Adrian. Thank you guys very much for supporting me on Patreon. I really appreciate it. For those of you out there that are watching this video, that like this video, please give this video a like. That helps the YouTube robots to know that you like the video and that they should promote it. Thank you for watching this video, which is helping to support the channel. If you would like to support the channel even more, if you look to your upper right, if you click on the eye icon, that'll take you to a link where you can go to my Patreon page and you can support this channel even more. Thank you. Hi, this is Ali Arango of littleguycgi.com, and today I would like to show you how to box model a simple male in Blender 2.8. So let's get started. Okay, there's some add-ons that we're going to want to turn on. So what we want to do is go to the upper left of the screen, click Edit, go to Preferences, and then we want to go to Add-ons. So scroll down, put a check mark next to Mesh F2, put a check mark next to Mesh Loop Tools, put a check mark next to Mesh Relax. Okay, in Blender, to manipulate your view, if you want to rotate your view, you can hold the middle mouse button to rotate your view. You can also go to the upper left click and drag your view to rotate. To pan the view, you can hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. You can also go to the upper left, go to this hand, and then left click and drag to pan. To zoom, you can roll your mouse both directions to zoom in and out. You can also go to the upper left and left click and drag up and down to zoom in and out. You can also hold Control as well as holding your middle mouse button to do a smooth zoom as far as zooming in and out. Okay, in Blender, the way you work as far as doing most of the things in Blender is you work using different modes. When you come into Blender, you're in object mode. When you look to the upper left-hand side, you can see we're in object mode. Most of our work today is going to be done in edit mode. So we're going to go to the upper left. We're going to, with this cube selected, we're going to left click on, looks like a arrow kind of, or a upside down triangle. We're going to left click, and then we're going to select edit mode. So in edit mode is where you manipulate your vertices, edges, as well as your faces. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan the view. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan down. Zooming in again. What we want to do is form the basic shape of our head. Let's go to front view. So what we're going to do is go to the upper right hand side. And you see when we hover over like this green circle right here, it says number pad 1. That is front view. So we're going to left click to go to front view. If you look to the upper left, you can see we're in front orthographic view. Typically in Blender, you'll work in perspective view or orthographic view. Perspective view is a view that lets you see things in 3D. I mean, we're in a 3D program, but it lets you see things in a 3D way. And the reason why I'm saying that is we're in orthographic view right now. Orthographic view is a way of seeing things almost as if they're 2D. Orthographic view tends to help when you're doing certain things in Blender, like what we're about to do right now. Okay, what we're about to do is to take this cube and make this more like a sphere-like shape. You might sit there and say, well, if you're going to make it like a sphere, why didn't you just start off with a sphere? I like how the faces, how the typology of cubes is set up more than spheres most of the time. That's why I choose to take the cube and make it like a sphere. So how do we make this look like a sphere? What we're going to do is with this cube selected, and we have the entire cube selected, we're going to right click, and when we right click we see this menu pop up. We're going to select subdivide. When we click subdivide, we can see faces, more geometry basically was added to this cube. What we're going to do after clicking that subdivide is look to our bottom left. See where it says subdivide here, it being Blender? We're going to look at this triangle here. We're going to left click, and then we see this number of cuts. We want to take this up to 3. And then you might be saying that it doesn't look like a sphere now. Well, the smoothness, we're going to left click and drag. And now we have the basic shape that we need to start working on our head. Okay, what we want to do now is I'm going to left click to deselect. By the way, to select everything in Blender, you press A, or Blender 2.8 I should say, you press A. To deselect everything, you can hold Alt, then press A, as well as left clicking on nothingness. Okay, as you follow along with this tutorial, make sure you're, well, where we're currently at in the tutorial, make sure you're in a front orthographic view. This is important because I need you to select 3 specific vertices. So we have these 3 vertices right here on the bottom. The next row up, we have these 3. We don't want any of these. We want these 3 right here. Why do we want these 3? We want these 3 because this is going to allow us to quickly pull out a chin for our simple male mesh. And it'll allow us to do it very quickly. So we're going to left click. I'm going to hold shift. While holding shift, I am selecting all of those vertices. I'm letting go of shift. Up here is our proportional editing tool. At least this is the button for it. I can click here and turn this on. I can click here and have multiple options for it. What we're going to do now is just press the O key to turn on the proportional editing tool. Okay, with the proportional editing tool turned on, as well as these 3 vertices being selected, what we're going to do is press G. Now when we press G, see that circle that popped up? That represents our proportional editing tool, right? So I'm going to press Z now. When I press Z, Blender 2.8 is now locked to the Z axis, which is in Blender is the up and down axis. So now I'm going to move my mouse down. I can only move up and down because I'm locked on that Z axis. Now as I pull this down, this is a chin, remember. If you see directly up where we have the 3 vertices selected, look over to the left and the right. It's kind of pointed. There's 2 vertices. What we want to do is roll your mouse, and as I roll the mouse, see like just outside the edge of the proportional editing tool circle, see those 2 vertices? You want to make that like that. All right, so we're gonna left click, and basically just like that, I'm gonna hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. We have the basic shape of a human head. Okay, what we're gonna do now is left click to deselect. What we want to do now is pull a neck out of this head. I'm gonna hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I've rotated the view so we can see these 8 faces right here. What we're gonna do is look to our upper left. Here's our vertex, edge, as well as face select, right? We can also, we can click here to select what we want there. We can also press 1. So where are we on vertex select? So I didn't select that. I can press 2. That takes us to edge select, or I can press 3. That takes us to the face select. So those are the regular number keys that are near the top left of a keyboard. Okay, what you want is to be on face select. We want to select all of these faces. There's multiple ways we can do this. I like to use the C key. The C key activates a paint-like mode in Blender. So we're going to press C. See that little circle right there? We can make that circle get bigger or smaller by rolling our mouse. We're going to use this to paint select these 8 faces here. So I'm going to left click and drag, and then I'm going to right click. So now we have those 8 faces selected. Okay, with those 8 faces selected, we're going to drag the neck out. However, before we do that, we want to turn off this proportional editing tool. So we're going to press the O key to turn off the proportional editing tool. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and rotate. I'm just trying to rotate so I can get a view of how this neck pulls out. We're going to press the E key, which lets us extrude or make new geometry. See that preview line, that bluish line that popped up? That line shows us how we're going to extrude. I like how that line looks as far as the angle of the neck. So we're going to ride that line right out. Then we're going to left click to lock that in. Okay, so we still have the bottom 8 faces there selected. Prepare yourself. We're going to extrude the neck so that it looks very strange. It's going to look strange, not that long. But we're going to press S and then move our mouse. And then left click so the neck almost looks like a fan. I know it looks strange. We're going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Now you're going to hover your mouse here. I'm going to show you something that you're going to use a lot while modeling in Blender. A lot of different types of work you'll use this a lot, particularly in box modeling. You'll use loop cuts a lot. So what you're going to do a loop cut is you're going to hold control. While holding control, you're going to press R. That puts up a loop cut preview. We want 2 loop cuts here. I'm going to roll the mouse 1 time. So now we have 2 loop cuts. When you in Blender, I didn't click anything yet. I'm going to click now. I clicked 1 time. It's important that you know how many times you clicked. Because in Blender, when you click 1 time with a loop cut, which I mentioned before, you tend to use a lot, you can move these loop cuts. So I'm going to move extremely slightly. I didn't do anything yet. Extremely slightly down. Then I'm going to left click a second time. When I left click the second time, now these loop cuts are locked in. Okay, so you might be saying, "Oh, that looks strange. That looks funny." It's like, wait a second. We're about to fix it in a second. So with these 2 loop cuts selected, what we're going to do is press S to scale, right? So I pressed S. This is important, this next step. I'm going to hold Shift, and then while holding Shift, I'm going to press Z. So first I pressed S to scale, then I held Shift, and I pressed Z. And what this does is we're going to scale on every axis but the Z axis. So now we're going to move our mouse in, and you can see now we have back to a decent looking neck shape again. I just held the middle mouse button to rotate. We're going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, we want to put a mirror modifier on this. Typically, when you put a mirror modifier in Blender, you'll select one part of your mesh, delete that, go over to the wrench, click add modifier. There's an easier way in Blender 2.8 to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to edit mode. We're going to go to preferences. We're looking back at add-ons again, and what we're looking for is auto mirror, which is very nice, particularly when you're working with characters. Where's it at? There we go. So see this auto mirror, put a check mark next to here. Okay, if you're looking at this and you're like, that looks strange, let's click on this wrench. This is where we work with our modifiers. Here's a mirror modifier that was put on for us by the auto mirror. See this little triangular looking thing? You're gonna left click that. Now it seems like we're like this is just like before anything was done to it. Okay, as far as why you would auto mirror, when you're working with bisymmetrical creatures like human beings, which have 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs, it saves a lot of time using things like the mirror modifier. Okay, so what do we do now? Now what we want to do is we want to make this easy. We want to be able to work fast making this, right? So I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. I'm going to look here. Go to face select. Remember, I could have pressed 3 on the number keypad as well. I'm going to press C for paint select. I'm going to select these 8 faces right here. I'm going to right click to get out of paint select. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. What we're going to do is flatten this out. We can flatten this out very easily. There's multiple ways we can do it. I'm going to show you the way where we press S to scale on the Z axis 0. And then we left click to lock that in. Okay, so we have this flattened out. This will make it easier for us to work on the rest of the upper body. I'm going to go to the left. I'm going to click on the move tool, right? See that little, I'll hold them in the mouse button, you can see this piece coming through. We don't want that. So we'll take the move tool and we'll push down. We mainly push down just so we have this where no other geometry is coming through this. Okay, so now that we have this flattened out, what we're going to do is we're going to press the E key. I like to do things, we can just push straight down. I like to right click. Now the new geometry is made. And then I like to take the move tool and push out the geometry. You could have just dragged it out. This is how I like to do things. But you want your geometry to, you want your geometry to come down here. Now, basically what you're looking at here is we can change the proportions later on. So don't be too concerned about the proportions. This basically right here, you want to be belt level. That's what you're thinking of. Belt level here, right? So I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. Just take a look. We need 3 loop cuts right here. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, before we put it in those loop cuts, I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. We actually want this part of the body to be this. When I say this part, this right here, these long 4 faces to be pushed up closer to the chin, right? So let's press C for paint select. So when we paint these sides, because we have a mirror, we get those other sides selected. So I'm going to right click to get out of paint select. I'll hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm rotating the view just so I can see. Here's the chin. I want to push this geometry here towards that chin. So I'm going to take the move tool and then push this towards the chin, not too far, right? We want this line here to be, for the most part, in the center of our body. So I'm going to left click to deselect, right? This was selected, even though you kind of couldn't see it when I was at that angle. Now we're going to press the 2 key. We press that because our mouse is all the way over here. If I didn't press 2, I'd have to go all the way over here and then left click the edge select. So you could click there or press 2. All right, so I'm going to click here, and I want to move this towards the center. However, I want this to move up as well. So what I'm going to do is hold shift, and then while holding shift, click here. Now I'm going to take the move tool and I'm moving this forward just to get this more towards the center. Okay, with that done, I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Now we can put our 3 or our 2 loop cuts in. We're going to hold control, press R, and then we're just going to roll the mouse wheel 1 time. All right, and then click anything. This is important. I'm going to left click 1 time. Because I left click 1 time, I can move these loop cuts. The reason why we move the loop cuts is that area above that top loop cut is where we're going to pour our arms out, right? So we're going to move this up. Now, what you're thinking about as you move this up is that right to the right side, all right? Right, see that little 2 black thing that my move tool kind of turned into? Right on that 2 side, that's where we're going to pour our shoulder from. So you want that to be a squarish area. So I'm going to left click to lock that in. The area I'm talking about is right here. Okay, the reason why we put 2 loop cuts in is this helps us with the general form of the upper body, particularly for a male human, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. And we are going to click here, hold shift, and then click here. And now we're going to push this in. The reason why we're pushing this in is we're basically thinking of the curve of the back. For a human, the male human particularly, we're going to click here, hold shift. And we're going to push this in as well, like that. This line is now, we can push this forward some, so we're going to click here again, hold shift, select there, hold the middle mouse button, hold shift, hold the middle mouse button to rotate, and I'm going to push this forward again like that. Okay, what we're going to do now is left click on nothingness to deselect. This area here, we want to make this thinner from like front to back, right? So we're going to press 3 on our number keypad, not a number keypad, sorry, the regular keypad near the top left of your keyboard. We're doing that again, so we don't have to go all the way up there. We're going to press C for paint select, and we're just going to select this whole area right here. I'm going to right click. We want to make this thinner. So what we're going to do is press S to scale on the Y axis. See that preview line kind of shows us how we're going to scale. So we're going to push this in, And just think about like how the side of a human body looks, and also where the arm is going to be pulled out. So we're going to left click to lock that in. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to left click to deselect. We're going to hold the mouse button to turn to the side. We're going to take a look. We're going to actually, well, let's click here, hold shift. So here's this area where we want our arm to come out. We're going to pull this back slightly like that. All right. Now we're going to hold the middle mouse button to turn to the side. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back, and we're going to pull to the side like that. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to extrude the arm area out. So we're going to press E to extrude. I'm going to press the X axis. Now when I first press E, you see there's like a blue line, and then I press X again because I want to make sure that I'm pulling right on the X axis. It tends to help when you're working in 3D to know what you're doing, and strange as it sounds, it helps for you to be constrained to either the X, Y, or Z axis. So I'm going to move this out like this, right? So this is basically our shoulder here. I'm going to left click. Now, what's interesting is we want the arm to actually come out from the bottom here. All right, so you would think like we're going to go from here. We're not going to go from here. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to press R to rotate on the Y axis. So then we're going to rotate up like this. See how that edge is almost pointing at the green line? That's good. We're going to left click, and then we're going to move this up like this. Now the reason why we're moving this up is so the arm can come from here. We're going to actually press R to rotate on the Y axis more. We're going to push this in some. And I like doing this because it kind of, we're box modeling. It kind of gives you a very quick way the shoulders kind of look like they are formed. Anyway, we're going to left click to deselect. I'm going to hold the mouse button to rotate. And what we're going to do now is we are going to, this is too long for the arm so to come out of. So we're going to hold control, press R. I'm going to left click once. Remember, when I left click once, I can move the loop cut. Now I'm moving here. So I'm left clicking again because I want the arm to come right from here. All right. That's why I did that. So I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, throughout the years, I would go back and forth between having arms come straight out or having arms come down. If you need to box model something and you need it quickly and you need it to look, as soon as you're done, to look decent, I would recommend you probably just bring the arms like down. Like, let me show you. If you have them coming down like this, and if you look at some of my older tutorials, I have the arms coming down. If you're making a model, you're working quick, and you're doing it for animation, I probably recommend you just go straight out. We're going to bring the arms straight out from here. So we're going to press 3 on our number keypad. That's the upper left of your keypad. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, rotate the view. I'm going to click here, hold shift, click here. I held shift so I can select more than one face at a time. And then what I'm going to do is press E to extrude on the X axis and then drag this out just like that. I'm going to left click. Now I'm going to press S to scale on the X axis 0, and what that did was that flattened out the geometry there. Now left click to lock that in. By the way, if you're like, my gosh, he starts talking, I'm either talking fast or talking fast, you can go to YouTube controls and you can slow down the speed. Okay, so we flatten this out, right? And remember, I did that by pressing S to scale on the X axis 0, and that just flattens this out, right? What we want to do is make this in a circular shape. An easy way we can do that is to right click. This menu pops up. We can go to loop tools, and then we see circles. We're going to left click on circle. We want this line here to be going right up and down. It pretty much is, but just in case yours isn't, what you can do is you can press the O key to turn on the proportional editing tool, right? Then you can press R to rotate on the, not there, the X axis, and see how I can rotate like this. So I'm going to right click to get out. Let me turn to the side. I'm going to press R to rotate just slightly. And the proportional editing tool helps to turn this some. You don't want to turn too much. But generally, it's not. I like to have this line going straight up and down. So what I'm going to do is press the O key to turn off the proportional editing tool. I'm going to press S to scale very slightly down. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to take the manipulator and pull this out slightly. Then I'm going to press E to extrude on the X axis. Pulling out basically an elbow. I'm going to press E to extrude on the X axis. This extrusion right here is going slightly more than the size of the elbow. I'm going to left click. Now I'm going to press S to scale. What this is this is basically our forearm here. The start of our forearm. Hold the middle mouse button. I just want to make sure it's flat. That's why I took a look. I'm going to press E to extrude on the X axis. I press the X axis even though you see the blue line because I just want to make sure this is going straight. So I'm dragging this out. I'm going to left click. This is a forearm. I'm going to press, I pressed already. That's the scale. So we have our forearm there. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to press E to extrude, then on the X to go on the X axis. This is our wrist, right? So there's our wrist. We're about to make the hand. The hand I'm about to show you is not the best hand. It is a very quick hand though, and it is functional. It works. So that's what we're going to do. I like the method of the hand, even, you know, for how it looks because it's fast. A hand can take you a decent amount of time. One of the advantages of box modeling is you can make up characters very quickly. This method that I'm showing you, you can use it. You can, if you memorize the method, you can make characters very quickly. Anyway, so this is our wrist. The next portions that you see are going to it's going to be our hand. So what we're going to do is press E to extrude on the X axis, right? So we have this area here. And this is going to be basically the back part of the hand. Then we're going to press E to extrude on the X axis. And this is basically going to be where our fingers come from. Okay, I'm going to hold them in the mouse button. You're like, how in the world are fingers going to come from that? Well, I will show you. So I'm going to left click. We're on face select. I'm going to click here, hold shift. I told you there were other ways of making things flat. See how I had to dodge the manipulator there? I like having it here, but if you click here, you can work without the manipulator. Anyway, I have this selected, right? I'm going to right click. We have our loop tools right there. See this right here? Flatten. Now it's flat. That's what we want. We're going to left click on nothingness to deselect that area there. We're going to hold shift. While holding shift, clicking. This is in the way. Sometimes I'll move the view just to get this out of the way. Like you saw right there. We have this selected. We want this flattened out. We're going to right click. There's loop tools. We're going to select flatten. Then we're going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. What we're going to do with this selected here is we're going to press E to extrude on the Y axis. There we go. You want this to be about this right here, this extrusion to be about around the size of that. Let's pull back some. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. You select the other side. We're about to extrude out here. We want this to be like that. We're going to press E to extrude on the Y axis. You can see this isn't totally flat, so we're going to left click to deselect. Let's press C for paint select. Select here. Right click to get out of paint select. Right click to go to loop tools and then select flatten. Let's go to the bottom. Left click to deselect up there. Let's press C for paint select. Right click to get out of paint select. Right click to go to loop tools. Then go to flatten. For some of you, again, if you're like, oh, he's speaking so fast, I'm trying to say, the shortcuts. I'm trying to say what I'm doing. You guys, when you say in the comments, like, you like the fact that I try to explain what I'm doing. You like the fact that I'm not making just time lapses. I mean, time lapses help me. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of them. There's a lot of time lapses on YouTube. I like to make videos where, in my mind, I hope that I could have somebody go from a cube all the way through the finished project. So if you like these type of videos, please give likes. That helps me know, that you like what I'm doing. It lets me know that you like seeing step by step instead of a time lapse. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to take a view. Let's go to the side here. Let's do the same thing. So we left clicked here. When we left clicked here, that made us automatically deselect there. I'm going to right click, select flatten. Doesn't really, I guess it didn't do anything because it's only one. Anyway, it doesn't have to be perfect. What we have here is we have the basics, the basis of what we need for our hand. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to press 2. Remember, I'm pressing 2 because I don't want to go all the way up there. At least I'm trying to show you that. Like you can click here, but it's useful to know shortcuts because just that little bit of time. So you might, well, why is he so? Why if you're doing it anyway, why are you doing it? Because it's a tutorial and I want you to get this. Anyway, I'm going to click here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to hold Shift. And when I hear people saying, that they like step by step and like they like the tutorials, when you make these tutorials, you know, sometimes it is a mental game. It does give me a boost to hear that, particularly when you see time lapse videos and they're getting, you know, all these views. You know, and I'm like, it's a time lapse. It's cool. It's useful, but typically I prefer step by step. So yeah, if you guys like these videos, give a like. If you really like them, you can come to my Patreon page. I am happy you guys are even looking at this, you know, looking at this. When you leave comments, it helps me out. Anyway, with what I did was I selected all of these edges right here, right? And what this is going to do is give us the basic shape of the hand. I'm going to left click and push back like this, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to left click on nothingness to deselect. By the way, shout out to Kelly and Adrian, my Patreon supporters. I know you guys like the box modeling technique, so I hope you guys are watching as well as enjoying this tutorial. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to select these fingers right here. I'm going to press C. See, I was on edge select. I messed up. I'm going to left click. Now I'm going to press 3 to go to face select. I'm going to press C for paint select and click here, right? I'm going to right click, get out of paint select. We want to extrude all of these faces, but we want to do this individually. So the way we can do that is we go up to the middle of the screen. This is our pivot point setting. We're going to left click here. We're going to go down to individual origins. We're going to click there, right? That partially sets us up. Now we need to do a special kind of extrude to extrude these fingers out. So I'm going to hold Alt, press E. That brings up our extrude menu, and then we're going to select extrude individual faces. So we're going to left click. I'm then going to right click. Doesn't look like anything happened, right? I just made new geometry. Just that geometry is on top of the old geometry. So now when I press S to scale, now you can see all of these individual faces are scaling, you know, individually. So now what we're going to do is pull this forward like that. And we're going to now press E to extrude, whoops, on the X-axis, like that. E to extrude on the X-axis, like that. E to extrude on the X-axis, like that. And now I'm going to hold Shift to deselect here. I'll just pull those fingers out so they're somewhat further than the other two. I'm going to left click now to deselect. Okay, so now we need a thumb. For that, we're going to need more geometry. So what we're going to do is hover right here, right? We're going to hold Control. While holding Control, press the R key. This puts a loop cut preview. See how it's going up and down? We don't want that. We want that loop cut going horizontally. So we're going to move to the side. I'm going to left click once, then left click a second time to lock that in. And now with that, I'm going to left click to deselect. There we go. I left click again to deselect there. Okay, so we need to pull out the thumb. So we're on edge select. That's interesting. It keeps selecting. Blender keeps selecting the edge. Anyway, if you want to totally deselect, you can hold Alt, press A, just to make sure. I'm going to click here, right? So there's an edge here as well as here. The manipulator's blocking it. We want to pull this edge out. That's going to give us like the meat part of the thumb. So we're going to push this out like that, right? We can actually click, manipulator's in the way, click here, and pull this over some, like that. Now we want to focus on this face right here. I'm going to left click to deselect. I'm going to press 3 for paint select. I'll click here. And now what we're going to do is press E to extrude on the Y axis. Bring this out like this. We'll press S to scale like that. We'll press E to extrude on the Y axis like this. We'll press E to extrude on the Y axis again like that. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. Taking a look, and what I'm going to do is I want the chest to come out more, so I'm going to go to edge select. I clicked up there. Sometimes just your brain will think and just pick. So I'm pushing the chest out more here, and then when I do that, I want this to come out as well. So I'm holding shift. And what I want is I want more of the bend in the back. Still have work to do, but since we're doing all this work on the upper body, so I'm just pushing this forward. Why am I pushing this forward? Just making this more equal, like there. Same thing here. I want more bend in the back, so I'm going to go to edge select. Click there. Push that in some there. And actually, I'm going to left click to deselect. I'm going to click here. These are minor things. You don't think you need to do this. I would recommend you do it, but pull back like that some. All right, I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. I want to make the body thinner. For that, I'm going to go to front view. We're in front orthographic view. If we were in perspective view, we want to go back to orthographic view, you can click here. This takes you into perspective mode. I click here again. We're back in orthographic mode. Okay, so I want this part of the body to be thinner. So to do that, I'm going to press Z. I'm going to press Z. Go to wireframe. I'm going to hold control. Hold the right mouse button and select the head. So I'm holding control. I'm holding the right mouse button down. That's how I drew that lasso select. I'm letting go. I didn't want this part, so I'll press C for paint select. I'll hold the middle mouse button. And that lets me deselect. I'm going to right click the out of paint select, press Z, go to solid view. I'm going to hold shift to deselect here. I let go of shift. I'm holding the middle mouse button. I'm going to press C for paint select. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. That lets me unselect. When I hold the middle mouse button, I'm going to right click to deselect, hold the middle mouse button to go back to the front view. Okay, so why did I select just the neck and the head? Because I want to select everything but the neck and the head. So how can I do that? If I hold control and then press I, we select everything other than what we have selected. So what I can do now is with the body selected, I can use the mirror modifier, push the body towards itself. And by doing that, gotta be careful here. I was able to make the body thinner, and now I'm just checking to make sure. Like it got close here. Be careful. You don't want your parts to bunch up, and if they went too far, what you can do is go to your mirror modifier, turn off clipping, like mine didn't go too far, but suppose you had lines cross over. You can turn off this clipping, pull your lines out, and then turn this clipping back on. So I don't have my lines like these lines going over that center line, so I'm just going to pull here to give myself some space. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect, hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view, hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan the view. Okay, what we're going to do now is form the lower body. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go to face select, click here, hold shift, hold the middle mouse button, We can actually push this toward itself some like that. You don't want your geometry to cross that center line. And what we're going to do here is we're going to press E to extrude on the Z axis like this. And now with these four faces selected, what you want to do is press S to scale on the Y axis like this. And then make sure you don't bunch up your geometry. Geometry shouldn't be crossing over itself. Now what we're going to do is left click to deselect. We're going to hover here, hold control, press R, left click once. Because I left click once, I can move this loop cut. I'm going to move this up very slightly. Now left click to lock that in. Now I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis like this. And then left click to lock that in. Then left click to deselect. Okay, what we want to do now is just trying to think, like, do I want, like, see how this is pushed back some? So I think I'm going to click here, push this forward some. And because we have a mirror modifier that's pushed forward, it being those two vertices are pushed forward on the other side as well. We're going to press let's press 3 to select the face select right there. Now we're going to press C for paint select. You want to select all of this geometry right here. Right click, press the X to bring up your delete menu, and then choose faces to delete. Okay, I'm going to zoom in. We're going to go to edge select. I'm going to click right here. Hold control as well as the middle mouse button. I'm doing that for a smooth zoom. I'm holding shift now. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to press E to extrude on the X axis like this. We're setting up hip structure basically here. We're pushing this down. If you can't see what I'm doing, let me rotate like that. So now we're going to left click to deselect. We're going to press 1 to go to vertex select. Okay, what we're going to do is with vertex select on, we're going to left click here, hold shift, and we're going to select these faces here. We're going to press F to fill. We're going to left click to deselect, hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. We're going to click these faces in the back, or vertices in the back. Sorry. We're going to press F to fill. Then I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, when you use this method, one of the nice things is when you get used to the method, you kind of can predict the geometry. This needs to be thinner here. So I'm going to hold shift to push this towards itself. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, we're going to go to edge select. We're going to hold the Alt key. When we hold the Alt key and select an edge, which we're about to do, selecting the edge now, we select this entire loop here, right? That's what we want. We're going to press E to extrude on the Z axis like this. Careful of that center line. Pull this to the side, mainly to not have this cross over. Push this down. We want to deal with this shape right here. The way we're going to deal with that shape is we're going to press S to scale on the Z axis 0. Then we're going to left click to lock that in. Okay, now that we have this flattened out, look at that shape. Looks strange, right? Well, we can fix that. We're going to right click. We're going to go to loop tools. We're going to select circle. And now we have a nice circular shape. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back to zoom back. I'm going to hold the mouse button to rotate the view. We need to push this forward like this. I'm going to push this up just slightly. Push this forward slightly more. If I hover here, this says 1. This is okay. Control 1. This is number pad 3. So this is orthographic view. You want this being slightly more than your chest here, being forward slightly more. Has to deal with the way you stand and how you balance as a human. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. Okay, one thing you should know is if you have a number keypad, if you press 1 on the number keypad, you go to front view. If you press 3 on the number keypad, you go to right view. If you press 7, you'll go to top view. And if you hold control, you'll go to the opposite side. I'm going to go up here, right? That's control 1, so this is the back view. I know it's back view because it says control number pad 1. When I move to the green, it says 1. See, it says shortcut number pad 1. I know that that's front view, so I'm going to click there to go to front view. Okay, so what we're going to do is extrude our legs out. So we're going to press E to extrude on the Z axis, and then we're going to come down like that. I'm going to press S to scale. When you're working in 3D, typically you're going to have to go front to back. All right, so we're looking at the front, or front to side, I'm sorry. With the legs particularly, when these legs come down, you need to pull these legs back. And again, it has to do with how you balance. So this needs to be back right here a little bit further than right there. All right. Pull this up some. All right, so now we're going to make the knees. We're going to press E to extrude on the Z axis. So there is our knee. Same thing, this needs to go back. So you're going to go here. You need to pull this line back like that. Okay, we're going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. You're going to press E to extrude on the Z axis. Come down, press S to scale this up. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view, and then you're going to pull this back. Like that again. You're going to press E to extrude on the Z axis. Move that down, press S to scale. And now finally you don't have to pull back. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan up. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate towards the view. If you get your proportions right the first time doing this, fine. If you don't be too concerned about it. It's fairly easy to change your proportions around. Okay, we're going to press E to extrude on the Z axis. So here are our ankles right there. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan up. We're going to press E to extrude on the Z axis. This is going to be the top part of our foot right there. I'm going to press E to extrude on the Z axis. It's going to be basically the bottom part of our foot right there. We're going to hold the middle mouse button, right? We want to fill this geometry in. There's something in, I just held shift and the middle mouse button to pan. There's something called grid fill. So we could take a vertex, copy it, move it to the center, and then like, kind of how I filled in like the hip area, but we're going to use grid fill. To do that, we're going to hold Control F, or hold Control, press F. This brings up our faces menu. We're going to go to grid fill. We're going to left click. And that gave us what we wanted. If it doesn't, sometimes you can go to offset, press 1, change the span. And when I say gave me what I wanted this line to go from front to back, side to side. That's what I wanted. But if it didn't, if it was turned, which sometimes grid fill will do, by changing the span, changing the offset, you can kind of get that area there to spin, to change how you want it to be. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hold Alt. I'm going to select this edge loop right there. I'm going to push this down about there. Now left click to deselect. I'm going to go to face select. I'm going to click here, hold shift. Let go of shift. Now I'm going to press E to extrude on the Y axis like this. I'm going to left click to deselect. I'm going to go to edge select, click here, hold shift. The middle mouse button to rotate. Did that just so I can dodge the manipulator. Then I'm going to push down like this. I'm going to left click to deselect. I'm going to click here, hold shift, pull that to the side. Left click here, hold shift. Push that to the side to make the foot wider. I'm going to left click to deselect. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hover here, hold control, press R, put a loop cut in. I'm going to left click once, left click a second time to lock in, left click on nothingness to deselect, left click here, hold shift, while holding shift I click there. Now I'm just pushing this down just to give shape to the foot. I'll left click on nothingness to deselect, hold control, press R. I'm going to put a loop cut here. Left click second time, locked it in. Left click on nothingness to deselect, click here, hold shift. Push that down some. Then left click to deselect. Okay, when I zoom back, we're going to take a look. Most of our work is done. Here we need to deal with holding shift and the middle mouse button to pan down. Here what we need to do is click here, push this down like that, pull it out to the side some like that. I'm going to go to vertex select just to make this line more set up with that vertex there. Hold the middle mouse button to take a look at this from the front. Okay, at this point you could call this done. You have a basic melt figure. We're going to add some more details to it that I think help a decent amount. We're going to go to edge select. We're going to click here. We're going to push this down some like that. Push this out some like that. Just working on that chest area here. I like this a lot. Here, the rib cage, we're about to emphasize kind of. So what we're going to do is hold control, press R, put a loop cut right here. We're going to left click once, left click a second time to lock that loop cut in. Now we're going to press R to rotate on the X axis. And what this does is this gives us kind of like a rib cage shape. I'm going to push that down slightly. Like it comes up here and kind of goes down towards the back. And then basically what I like to do is come here, left click to deselect, click here, hold shift, push that down even more like that. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to hover here, hold control, press R, left click to lock in, and then left click to deselect. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to click here, push this down very slightly. Now I'm going to click here. I'll left click to get the manipulator to go away. I'm going to push this down. This is basically giving us like the bottom shape of like the abdominal section there. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do is press the 3 for face select. We're going to press C for paint select. We're going to select these faces right here. We're going to right click. We're going to press E to extrude, right click. Now we could have inset. I'm just used to extruding. Inset would give us the same thing. But we made new geometry, even doesn't look like it. We're going to press S to scale. Like that. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis slightly like that. I'm going to hold them in the mouse button and rotate the view. And we're actually going to push this forward some like that. Then I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold them in the mouse button and rotate the view. I'm going to click, well, I'm going to go to edge select first. Select there, push that down some like that. I'm going to push to make this go slightly over the abdominal area. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a line here to emphasize like the hardness of the chest. I'm going to hover here, hold control. While holding control, press R. Move my loop cut preview. Left click once, because I left click once, I can move the loop cut preview. Move that line down. Left click once, or left. Sorry, that's the second left click. Where you have two lines together, you kind of make models harder. So I wanted this line to be fairly close to that line. Okay, when I say make models harder, I mean as in hard surface, not more difficult. Okay, so what I'm going to do is click here, push this out some like that. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. Whoa. Hold the middle mouse button, rotate the view. I'm going to go to face select. We're going to go to our mirror option. So here's the wrench. This takes us to our mirror modifier options. We're going to turn off clipping. We're going to select here, hold shift, and then while holding shift, select here. We're going to press E to extrude. I'm then going to right click to get that geometry to stay in place. Doesn't look like we did anything, but we made new geometry. I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate. So I'm going to pull back and then to the side like that. Now I'm going to turn the clipping back on for our mirror modifier options over there. Okay, I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. We want a hard line to be right here. And the reason why is we're going to put a subdivision surface modifier on here. So I'm going to hold control, press R, left click once. Because I left click once, I was able to move this loop cut up. You don't want this totally right next to the other line, but fairly close. I'm going to left click to deselect now. Blender's default pivot point is the medium point. We're going to go up near the top middle and change from our individual origins. We had set this up to use to form the fingers of the hand. So now we're going to change this back to Blender's default pivot point, which is the medium point. Okay, what we're going to do now is look towards the top. Our pivot point was set for individual origins when we worked on forming our hand. We're going to change the pivot point back to Blender's default pivot point, which is the medium point. So I'm going to left click there. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. So I'm going to hover here. I'm going to hold control. While holding control, I'm going to press R. That put a loop cut there. I'm going to left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. We're going to use a special kind of scale to scale this area up. It's going to be a type of scale that makes things fatter. We're going to hold Alt, press S to do this. Move our mouse down. We're going to left click. We're just giving some shape to our thighs there. I'm going to left click again to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hover here, hold control, press R to put a loop cut right there. I'm going to left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hover here, hold control, press R, left click once, left click a second time to lock that in. I'm going to press C for paint select, hold the middle mouse button to deselect these edges in the front, right click to get out of paint select. And I actually don't want this one either. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to left click to deselect. I'm going to click right here, pull this out to the side slightly like that. Click here, pull that out to the side like that. I'm going to left click to deselect. I'm going to hover here, hold control, press R, left click once. Because I left click once, I can move this loop cut. I'm going to move this closer here. I'm going to left click a second time. I'm going to press S to scale. Scale that down some. Hold them in the mouse button, taking a look. I'm going to press Z, go to wireframe, left click on nothingness to deselect. Press B for box select. To select this hand, I'm going to press S and scale this down some, like that. Push that in some like that. I'll left click to deselect, press Z, and then go back to solid view. Okay, we have edge select on. I'm going to hold Alt, click here, because remember it's supposed to be our elbow. I'm going to press G, G twice. Lets me slide this edge, because this is supposed to be our elbow here. So I'm going to left click there, press S to scale that down slightly. Then I'm going to left click to deselect. I'm going to hover here, hold control, press R, left click once, left click a second time. I don't want this line to be diagonal like that. So I'm going to press S to scale in the X axis 0, and then left click, and that just straighten that line up. Now we're going to hold Alt, press S. That's that special type scale, makes things fatter. I'm going to hold Shift, move down. That just helps us as far as giving some shape to our biceps, triceps would be. Okay, I want to put some separation for the chest area. So how do we do that without affecting the face? And the reason why we don't want to affect the face is set up in a way that makes it very easy for us to box model a face later on. I'm going to go to face select. What we can do is select these lines here. I'm just holding shift. Let go of shift now. Okay, so with this selected, what we're going to do is press the E key to extrude. We're going to right click. We just made new geometry. Again, we could have used inset. I just prefer to use extrude because I'm used to using extrude. So we have new geometry here that we can scale this new geometry even though it doesn't look like we did anything. So we're going to press S to scale on the X axis and scale this geometry like this. And then we'll push this geometry towards itself. Be careful not to cross over that line. And then that line, when I say that line, I mean the center line. I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel in. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to go to vertex select. Just to pull this up. And what we're going to do is we're going to use something called the shortest path. It's a way of selecting edges or vertices or faces and lines. I'm going to click here, hold control, and then while holding control, I'm going to left click here. So by clicking here, holding control, and then left clicking there, all of the edges in between those two areas was also selected. Okay, so with those edges selected, what we're going to do is pull in like that. We're going to left click to deselect. Left click again to deselect. I'm taking a look now. Okay, what we're going to do is zoom in. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hover here, hold control, press R. Left click once, left click a second time to lock in. I'm going to, with edge select on, which we have edge select selected, I held shift. Now I'm just pushing this out just to give the knee area some shape. I'm going to left click to deselect. I'm going to zoom back. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button. Pan. I want to put a loop cut right here. I'm going to hold control, press R, move my mouse so that's horizontal. Left click once because I left click once I can move this loop cut, and I don't want to move this all the way down, but close to the bottom edge. I'm going to left click to lock that in, then left click to deselect. Okay, we're almost done. Now we want to put a subdivision surface modifier on here. We can press Control 2. That will put a subdivision surface modifier on here. I'm going to go to the upper left, select Object Mode, go to what looks like our wrench, go to Add Modifier, go to our triangular looking thing all the way to the right. And then I'm going to go to where we have Modify, Generate, Deform, Simulate. We're going to go to Generate, look down to where we see Subdivision Surface, left click. And then we're going to, here's our subdivision surface modifier here. For viewport, we're going to change this to 2. We're going to select this little triangular looking thing here. Now we're going to right click and then select Shade Smooth. So what we're going to do now is take a look at what we have here. We're going to go back to edit mode. This is bunched up some here, so let's click this. We'll push that down some. Push this. So by pushing these lines together, I can make that things seem harder there. So I'm taking a look. I'm going to hover here, hold Control, press R, left click once, left click a second time to lock that Extrude cut in. We're going to press 3 to go to face select, hold Shift, pull that up some like that, so the thumb has more geometry there. I'm going to left click to deselect. Go back to object mode. So what we're going to do now is let's go work with this in sculpt mode. So we're going to go to sculpt mode. Here in sculpt mode, we have all these brushes, right? We're going to use this sculpt mode to pretty easily change how our mesh looks. So we can easily adjust things like here. I'm going to hold Shift. That put a smooth modifier on there. So that basically what's going on here, these are our different brushes. They do different things. The grab brush you'll tend to use a lot when adjusting a box model mesh like this. You'll tend to use inflate a lot. The crease tool, you'll tend to use that a lot. And I'm looking for smooth. Okay, you'll use smooth a lot. Use smooth so much that Blender has it built in. When you hold Shift, you automatically use smooth. So even though you don't see this be selected, if I'm using a tool and I hold Shift, sculpt mode, you'll automatically shift to smooth. That's how often you tend to use smooth. Okay, so I'm going to go to the inflate brush. Add some mask to the legs. We'll try not to do too much. I'm going to hold Shift. Oh, cap lock, sorry. There we go, there's Shift. To smooth that out. We should have a line coming down the back. I forgot that. We're going to go back to edit mode. We're going to go to let's go to our subdivision surface modifier. See, it looks like a screen there. We're going to click to turn that off, right? We're going to go to edge select. We're going to hold Alt, select here. So now we have that edge. That's the separation, right? We don't want the face to have an edge. So what we're going to do is we're going to press Z, go to wireframe. We're going to press C. We're going to deselect. I have paint select on. I'm holding the middle mouse button. I'm going to right click. So the places where we want the edge, we selected that whole loop going around, then we just deselected. That's what we just did. We're going to press Z, then select solid view. Okay, so I'm going to go to the right, turn that monitor looking thing back on. So now we have more of a crease down the back. I'm going to go to the upper left, go to object mode, and go to scope mode. We'll keep shaping. So we have this geometry for the neck that makes things easy to move. So we're going to go to our grab brush. So pull this area here. And if it's not moving, it's because I'm not grabbing like right on the edges. Actually, move this. If you want to have more like control over areas, you can always add more geometry. So here we're going to pull these shoulders. We're actually just grabbing a line and pulling them in like that. And for here, I'm going to hold Shift. What we can do here is go to the crease brush. And with the crease brush, what we can do is we can make edges harder very easily with the crease brush. I actually want to make this go in some, so the crease brush is set up so it automatically goes in. To get to the options of the crease brush, if I, with this selected, if I press the in key and we click tool, you can see all these options here for the crease brush. And the crease brush, so if we go here as well, we can see the same thing. Now see this direction where the direction says subtract? Most of the brushes are automatically on add. When I hold control, I'll do the opposite. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the crease brush without holding control to put more of a crease in. Then here I'm going to hold control, which will make things come out, and this will sharpen that area right there. I'm letting go of control here. I'm going to hold shift. And I can you know, just grab and reshape things how I want them to be. I don't like how close that looks there, so what I'm going to do is go from here to edit mode. I'm going to go to edge select. Push this down. Push that down. Pull this over. I think this is where things are kind of like bunched up there. If it makes things easier, we can click on the wrench. And we can see where I'm like bunching stuff up. And sometimes that's why it's good to turn that off. Yeah. I'm just adjusting these vertices here. And that's got kind of bunched up from using scope mode. Like you can see, you can come back and fix it fairly easily. Let's turn that, well, let's deselect, let's turn that back on. I'll put another edge loop here. I'm gonna go to edge select, click here, hold control, select the shortest path and push this down some, push this out some. I'm gonna bring this out. Do vertex select, push that out. Let's go to back to left click to deselect, go back to scope mode. Let's go to our crease brush again. Okay, I'm just gonna go on the side here like that. I'll go to the grab brush, press F to make this bigger, which is how you do that. I'll hold shift to smooth that out there. Holding control in the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm going to go to edit mode. Remember I told you about the proportions. So I'm going to press Z, go to wireframe. Select here, press S to scale on the X-axis, like that. Bring that in some. I'm going to select here. Press S to scale on the Z-axis like that. Bring that up some like that. Press Z. Go to solid view. Let's left click to make sure we're not selected on anything. Let's go back to scope mode. We're just taking a look. So we'll zoom in. Press F to shrink our brush. Just pull from the side like that. And we'll now hold the mouse button to take a look. Okay, now you know how to box model a simple male character in Blender 2.8. Okay guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who like these videos and reshare them, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. If you would like to support this channel even more, you can support me on my Patreon page. For those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel, you would like to see more, please subscribe and thank you for viewing.